All right. So today we're going to finish up learning about Rip Van Winkle. We began talking about it yesterday, and then for homework last night, you finished the reading, hopefully finished annotating as well. So welcome to the second day of Rip Van Winkle. Go ahead and make sure you have your text, your notebook, your pencil, get all your things ready. Today we're going to finish discussing Rip Van Winkle. We're going to do a little bit more annotating like we started yesterday, and we're also going to have a mini grammar lesson as well. Go ahead and take a look at the handout that you received yesterday on the American Revolution. We talked about all the historical context, kind of set the stage for what's going on in the background of the Rip Van Winkle story. If you weren't here yesterday, or if you had any questions from yesterday, take a look at that and let me know. If you had any questions before we begin, want to make sure that we have the background knowledge always before we understand a piece of literature. It helps to know what's going on in the background, what's going on in the author's mind, and it just helps us to understand all the little bits and pieces. So, of course, remember that this story does take place around the American Revolution. When Rip Van Winkle falls asleep, America is still under British rule. But when he wakes up, it's an independent nation. I mean, can you imagine what a big difference that would be? Before we jump in, we're going to jot down just a little quick prediction. Make sure you got your notebook out. Get your notebook out. Get your pencil. Okay, we're going to jot down a little quick prediction. What do you think happens? What do you think would happen? What do you think could happen if you were to sleep through some major change in the world? Think about the major changes that we've seen recently. If you were to completely sleep through it, completely miss it, what do you think that would look like? What do you think would happen? Just imagine that for a second. Write down your thoughts, just one or two sentences. It doesn't have to be deep. You don't have to think for a long time. Think about that. Write that down. Just for a minute, Okay. All right. Turn to your partner, turn to your neighbor. I want you to kind of share for a second what you think. Listen to what they think. Let's talk about that for just a second. Turn to your partner. Just share. All right. Share your predictions. Something to think about. Something to think about as we look into this. It's hard to think about. It's hard to believe because we're so up to minute with all your notifications that you get all the time. Can you even imagine? These thoughts that you're having, these predictions, that's going to tie into our theme of transformation that we're going to explore all the way through Rip Van Winkle. All right, yesterday we brought up a couple of questions that I want you to think about. Keep these in mind as we're reading. Hopefully you finished reading it last night, but we'll touch on some parts again today. Keep in mind these essential questions. How does the passage of time affect people and society? And what does true independence look like? What would that look like for you? What would you be willing to sacrifice to achieve it? True independence, what would that look like? We'll talk about all those things as we read through what Rip experiences. All right, so let's pick up where we left off yesterday. We began reading about halfway through. In your text, in your copy of Rip Van Winkle, go ahead and turn to page 776. 776, look for the fourth paragraph. Fourth paragraph from the top, 776. All right. As I read, I'm going to read part of this out loud to you. Read along with me. Get your pencil. Make sure you have your pencil. I want you to jot down your thoughts, jot down your reactions, any explanations that I give or that you kind of come across. You can underline or you can highlight anything that you think is important. Words that you want to better understand, words maybe you want to look them up later or you want to ask me about later. All right, get your pencils. 776. Fourth paragraph from the top. Okay, it starts with on awakening. Everybody got it? All right, on awakening, who's he? Rip. On awakening, he found himself on the green knoll from whence he had first seen the old man of the glen. He rubbed his eyes. It was a bright, sunny morning. The birds were hopping and twittering among the bushes, and the eagle was wheeling aloft and breasting the pure mountain breeze. Surely, thought Rip, I have not slept here all night. He recalled the occurrences before he fell asleep. the strange man with a keg of liquor, the mountain ravine, the wild retreat among the rocks, the woebegone party at ninepins, the flagon, that flagon, that wicked flagon, thought Rip. What excuse shall I make to Dame Van Winkle? He looked round for his gun, but in place of the clean, well-oiled fowling piece, he found an old firelock lying by him, the barrel encrusted with rust, the lock falling off, and the stockworm eaten. He now suspected that the grave roysters of the mountain had put a trick upon him. What's roysters? What does that mean? Did anybody look it up when you were going through last night? Did anybody look that one up? I did. Roysters. That's boisterous people. My dictionary said merrymakers. The grave roysters of the mountain had put a trick upon him, and having dosed him with liquor, had robbed him of his gun. He didn't even recognize that gun as being his. Wolf, too, had disappeared. Who was Wolf? His dog. He disappeared, too, but he might have strayed away after a squirrel or partridge. He whistled after him and shouted his name, but all in vain. The echoes repeated his whistle and shout, but no dog was to be seen. He determined to revisit the scene of last evening's gambol. That would be, I looked that one up too, and it means to run or jump about playfully. And if he met with any of the party, to demand his dog and gun. As he arose to walk, he found himself stiff in the joints and wanting in his usual activity. He didn't feel quite right. His body didn't feel right. These mountain beds do not agree with me, thought Rip, and if this frolic should lay me up with a fit of the rheumatism, I shall have a blessed time with Dame Van Winkle. With some difficulty he got down into the glen. He found the gully up which he and his companion had ascended the previous evening, but to his astonishment a mountain stream was now foaming down it, leaping from rock to rock, and filling the glen with babbling murmurs. He, however, made shift to scramble up its side, working his toilsome way through thickets of birch, sassafras, and witch hazel, and sometimes tripped up or entangled by the wild grapevines that twisted their coils and tendrils from tree to tree and spread a kind of network in his path. He's describing what he had climbed up looked one way, but now after his nap, what he's climbing down looks very different. He doesn't recognize it at all. All right, one more. At length he reached to where the ravine had opened through the cliffs to the amphitheater, but no traces of such opening remained. The rocks presented a high, impenetrable wall over which the torrent came tumbling in a sheet of feathery foam and fell into a broad, deep basin, black from the shadows of the surrounding forest. Here, then, poor Rip was brought to a stand. He again called and whistled after his dog. He was only answered by the cawing of a flock of idle crows, sporting high in air about a dry tree that overhung a sunny precipice, and who, secure in their elevation, seemed to look down and scoff at the poor man's perplexities. Can you imagine for a minute just how confused he must have felt in this moment? He wakes up, his dog is gone, his gun is unrecognizable, his body doesn't feel the way that he remembered it feeling, he can't move about the way that he used to. I want you to pause right here and take a look at the descriptive language that Washington Irving uses. He really paints a picture. We noticed yesterday, we talked about when we read some out loud, the way that he paints a picture of the Catskills and the Hudson River. And now, you know, at the beginning, Rip, and now also Rip, after he's woken up from this long nap, we have a different description. So I want you to pay attention that the way that these descriptions are written, when you're writing, when you use more than one description or adjective, we want to make sure that we're using our commas correctly, so that your reader knows what you mean. The same way that we read this story and we want to understand what Irving has in mind for us to get, we want to be able to see Rip or see the Catskill Mountains. It's the same when you write something. You want me, or whoever your reader might be, to understand what you mean. You don't want to leave it up for confusion. You don't want to leave it up to something being misinterpreted or misunderstood. So you have to use your commas correctly so that your readers know what you mean. Writing can get confusing very quickly if you don't use the correct punctuation. So I want to draw your attention to an example. In the beginning of the story, Irving describes Rip as a lazy, good-natured fellow with a wife who scolded him constantly. I've got that written up here. A lazy, good-natured fellow with a wife who scolded him constantly. Take a look at the commas that we've got here. The commas break up these descriptions so that you don't get them confused, so that you understand there's a break in between. Okay, this is called serial commas, not cereal like you had for breakfast this morning. I've got it spelled right here for you. Serial, like a list of. This is a list of adjectives, a list of descriptions, and breaking up the list are these commas. So you want to use your commas correctly like this so that your reader knows what you mean, so that the meaning doesn't get lost. You don't want your beautiful descriptive language to be misunderstood. It can be very confusing if you don't use your commas correctly, okay? This makes your descriptions clearer. It makes it to where the reader can picture it in their mind's eye. There's another example from the story when Washington Irving is describing the Catskill Mountains to us. He writes, "The mountains were covered in mist, comma, trees, comma, and shadows." Imagine if you took those commas out. Listen to this. The mountains were covered in mist, trees, and shadows. Well, that's confusing. What is a mist tree? That's just confusing. If you don't have the commas breaking up the descriptions or the adjectives, it gets very confusing very quickly. The rule is in a list of 3 or more items, you're using these commas between, just like this, and you add "and" before the final one. I want to introduce this to you as the Oxford comma. Some of you I know already have this. If you didn't already know, this is called the Oxford comma when you have 3 or more adjectives or descriptives in a list like this. The last one is preceded by the word "and." I want to show you why. Again, it's for clarity, but I want to show you why that makes more sense. If you take out the "and," it just runs on and on. Given the "and" there at the end, it not only breaks up, okay, it lets people know this is the very end of it. This is called the Oxford comma. We're going to practice this, okay? So I know you have your notebooks out. Get your paper, get your pencil. I want to do just a quick little practice of this, okay? I want you to think about Rip. It can be at the beginning of the story, or it can be here after he's woken up and he's old and tired and confused. I want you to write your own descriptive sentence about Rip using a list of at least 3 adjectives or items. Think about how you would describe Rip. Think about that. I want you to write down one little sentence, one little descriptive sentence, using your commas correctly, breaking up your adjectives or your descriptions. And if you have 3 or more, make sure you're using the Oxford comma with the "and." Do that real quick, real quick. All right. If you're already finished, go ahead, go to the next line. Now I want you to do the same thing with Dame Van Winkle. Use what you know about Dame, what you remember about her description at the beginning. Write your own descriptive sentence of Dame Van Winkle using at least 3 or more adjectives. Use your commas correctly. Let's write one little descriptive sentence about Dame Van Winkle. Real quick. You don't have to think about it too hard. Okay. Good. All right. Just like we see with Washington Irving, when you use this method, when you use your descriptive words and your list of descriptions or adjectives like this, it helps your writing pop. It helps the reader understand exactly what you mean, picture the same thing that you can picture. That helps. That's going to help your writing a lot. I want to go ahead and move on into our quick write number 1. I've got it written up on the board here for us. So as we just read, this is what we just read. As Rip wakes up, he wakes up from his long, mysterious, magical nap, okay? He's slowly making his way down the mountain. Where does he go first? Remember from your reading last night, where does he go first? He goes to his house, right? But how does he find his house? Does it look great? Does it look polished up? Does it look wonderful? No, it's in shambles, right? And so then where does he move on? He wanders on into town. He's confused. You know, the children are not his friends anymore. They're making fun of his long beard. He's all confused. All right, what I want you to do, I want you to grab your pencil. If you need to turn to a clean sheet of paper, go ahead, or just move further down on the paper, that's fine. Grab your pencil. I want you to think for just a minute about what that would look like. What would that look like to you if you woke up from a 20-year nap? All right, think about that for just a minute. I want you to write a quick paragraph 5 to 6 sentences, something like that. Describe what you think your neighborhood would look like if you slept for 20 years. Just one paragraph. What would your neighborhood look like if you slept for 20 years? You woke up, you're confused, you don't understand what you're looking at. He doesn't understand yet that he's been asleep for 20 years. Imagine what it would look like in your neighborhood. One quick paragraph. Make sure you use at least one descriptive list using your serial commas or your Oxford comma, as the case may be. Use more than one if you want to. Just one quick paragraph. Imagine your neighborhood. Imagine the changes that would take place. If we have time at the end, I want to share these, but if not, we'll turn them in so that I can read them. No worries. Just think about that for a quick minute. Because we're turning them in, make sure you have your name at the top of your page. Make sure you're using your nice handwriting too so I can read it. Okay? Good, good, good. All right, so save that, okay? So, okay, that's how, when Rip first woke up. Now, since you finished reading this last night, this was homework last night, remember to finish reading, we're going to go ahead and skip ahead. We can't read the entire thing in class. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead for our classroom reading. I want you to turn now to page 783. All right, 783, almost the very end. This skips ahead. Rip's gone to town. He's already figured out what's going on. He's figured out that we're an independent nation. He's reconnected with his friends. He found out what happened to Dame Van Winkle, all that good stuff. We're going to skip ahead to the end. Look for the second paragraph on 783. All right, second paragraph. It begins with Rip resumed his old walks. Ready? Get your pencil, make your notes as we go along. All right, Rip now resumed his old walks and habits. He soon found many of his former cronies, that means friends, though all rather the worse for the wear and tear of time. They've all gotten older too. And preferred making friends among the rising generation, with whom he soon grew into great favor. Having nothing to do at home and being arrived at that happy age when a man can be idle, arguably what he's been waiting for his whole life, right? With impunity, he took his place once more on the bench at the inn door and was reverenced as one of the patriarchs of the village and a chronicle of the old times before the war. It was some time before he could get into a regular track of gossip or could be made to comprehend the strange events that had taken place during his torpor. Did anybody look that one up? Torpor. Did you look that up as you were reading through? That's a state of physical or mental inactivity. A state of physical or mental inactivity. How that there had been a revolutionary war, that the country had thrown off the yoke of old England, and that instead of being a subject of His Majesty George III, he was now a free citizen of the United States. That would be a lot to come to terms with. Rip, in fact, was no politician. The changes of states and empires made but little impression on him. But there was one species of despotism under which he had long groaned, and that was petticoat government. Happily, that was at an end. He had got his neck out of the yoke of matrimony and could go in and out whenever he pleased without dreading the tyranny of Dame Van Winkle. Whenever her name was mentioned, however, he shook his head, shrugged his shoulders, and cast up his eyes, which might pass either for an expression of resignation to his fate or joy at his deliverance. He used to tell his story to every stranger that arrived at Mr. Doolittle's hotel. He was observed at first to vary on some points every time he told it, which was doubtless owing to his having so recently wakened. It at last settled down precisely to the tale I have related, and not a man, woman, or child in the neighborhood but knew it by heart. Some always pretended to doubt the reality of it and insisted that Rip had been out of his head, and that this was one point on which he always remained flighty. The old Dutch inhabitants, however, almost universally gave it full credit. Even to this day, they never hear a thunderstorm of a summer afternoon about the Catskill, but they say Hendrick Hudson and his crew are at their game of ninepins, and it is a common wish of all henpecked husbands in the neighborhood, when life hangs heavy on their hands, that they might have a quieting draught out of Rip Van Winkle's Flagon. All right, so that's how he wound up, pretty much the same way he started, right? Still lazy, still doesn't want to accomplish anything. He finally gets away from Dame Van Winkle, however, and he just winds up just as happy as can be still. All right, before we finish up, we're going to move on down to our quick write number 2. If you need to turn to a fresh sheet of paper, go ahead and do that. If you want to just turn to the back, that's okay too. Just make sure your name's on it, all right? Quick write number 2. This one's going to be faster. We're almost done. Imagine that you're Rip Van Winkle, and you are waking up today. You've been asleep for 20 years, all right, and you're waking up today. Write just 3 to 4 sentences, real quick. 3 to 4 sentences explaining just one. Pick one modern day change. Remember, you've been asleep 20 years. What's one modern change that would shock you today? Think about that just for a second. It could be something about technology, food, society, clothing. Just be creative. 3 to 4 sentences. I want you to use at least one list of description like this where we use our commas correctly, okay? Just make sure you have at least one list with your adjectives and your descriptions with your commas. Take just a minute to work on that. All right, we're going to turn all these in, no worries. I can't wait to see what you wrote. That was a great job today. So yesterday we discussed the historical context, okay? We finished reading it for homework last night, hopefully did some annotations. Today we did a little bit of reading and finished up. We talked about the colorful descriptions that Washington Irving uses and the commas that he uses correctly. I hope that we got lots of good practice in on that today. I'm going to take a look at these as an exit slip. Okay, make sure you turn them in, and we'll practice it tomorrow if we need to some more, or I'll give you some corrections if we need to, because that's an excellent way to make your writing pop, and it's a good thing to have mastered. All right, so for homework tonight, if you didn't finish reading last night, go ahead and finish reading it. Go ahead and finish annotating it as well. Tomorrow we're going to do a little bit of a longer writing assignment, so make sure you get this all done. Look up the words that you don't understand, remember, write them down. All right, make sure that you turn in your writing assignments that we've done today. Okay, and great job. Thank you.